Daniel Faraday, but a Faraday cage is like a nuclear. It like shields an EMP blast.
Our church can shield the EMP.
So can a car. Yeah. If you place your cell phone inside a car during a if you place your cell phone inside a car during a nuclear blast, you probably your cell phone will probably be okay. Because a car is a big metal, an old car. The car is a big metal box that is off the ground and like, isolated. Yeah. What? No, you don't want it to be. You don't want it to be grounded. Yeah. What? Yeah, they won't, however, work. Like Wi-Fi and stuff won't work because there won't be Wi-Fi. Yeah. But landlines. Yes, but rotary, like we'd still be able to do local play with our DSs. But yeah. But rotary phones that were working on a landline, they'll still work. So like payphones, they'd probably work. All right, are we ready to get started? Let's get started. Okay. Okay, guys, what did we talk about last week? Self-control. Very good. What did we talk about the week before that? Yes, we did talk about Proverbs. We talked from Proverbs. No. Simple truths. Honesty, okay? And then before that, we talked about legacy. And specific to what? God's legacy, and specific to community. Community, okay? Everything is communal. So when we're talking about honesty, we're talking about communal honesty. When we're talking about self-control, we're talking about communal self-control. There's a lot of things on the threads I just want to address really quickly because it's my last week before James takes over. Any questions so far that you want to ask? Like from the threads and stuff? No? No questions? Okay. Then we're going to sum it up in chapter 16. Chapter 16 starts, "We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. Commit your actions to the Lord and your plans will succeed. The Lord has made everything for his own purposes, even the wicked for a day of disaster. The Lord detests the proud. They will surely be punished. Unfailing love and faithfulness make atonement for sin. By fearing the Lord, people avoid evil. When people's lives please the Lord, even their enemies are at peace with them. Better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. The king speaks with divine wisdom. He must never judge unfairly. The Lord demands accurate scales and balances. He sets the standards of fairness. A king detests wrongdoing, for his rule is built on justice. The king is pleased with words from righteous lips. He loves those who speak honestly. The anger of the king is a deadly threat. The wise will try to appease it. When the king smiles, there's life. His favor refreshes like a spring rain. How much better to get wisdom than gold and good judgment than silver? The path of the virtuous leads away from evil. Whoever follows that path is safe. Pride goes before destruction and haughtiness before a fall. Better to live humbly with the poor than to share plunder with the proud. Those who listen to instruction will prosper. Those who trust the Lord will be joyful. The wise are known for their understanding, and pleasant words are persuasive. Discretion is a life-giving fountain to those who possess it, but discipline is wasted on fools. From a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. There is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. It is good for workers to have an appetite. An empty stomach drives them on. Scoundrels create trouble. Their words are a destructive blaze. A troublemaker plants seeds of strife. Gossip separates the best of friends. Violent people mislead their companions, leading them down a harmful path. With narrowed eyes, people plot evil. With a smirk, they plan their mischief. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It's gained by living a godly life. Better to be patient than powerful. Better to have self-control than to conquer a city. We may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 sections in chapter 16, and all of them have the same basic theme. What is it? I know it's a hard one every single time. Wisdom what? That's the theme of Proverbs. What's the theme of the chapter? I really like chapter 16, and one of the reasons I like it is because it has some really basic messages in it that have a place in history. For instance, you've heard the term "pride goes before the fall." That's where it comes from. So, the way that I think of Proverbs chapter 16, it kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings. Okay, sorry, John, wherever you are, there you are, but it kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings. There's a sort of epicness to it. And the epicness goes something like this. In the background, you hear the opening from Beauty and the Beast. I don't know if you guys remember that. It's where they talk, not where she sings, there's a town, it's a quiet village, but where the rose, they're talking about the rose, right? And there's this song that plays. It's like, da na 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 na. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. And then the narration begins. So that's how Beauty and the Beast starts. I imagine, for whatever reason, that epic narration music happening in the background, and then you get these words from Proverbs 16 that starts out with this phrase: there is a path, a choice. Okay? That is what Proverbs 16 is about. The whole of Proverbs 16 is about this epic choice that leads one way or the other. Now the question is, what is that choice? We know that choice involves self-control. That was set up a while ago. That was set up last week. But it's set up all throughout Proverbs, right? It talks about that multiple times, that self-control is important. Patience is important. Long-suffering is important. We know that choice involves self-control. We know that choice involves wisdom and foolishness. We know that choice involves an understanding of things to come, which is involved in self-control and patience, the idea of legacy. We know that choice involves the community. We know that it's bigger than one man or one thing. Legacy. Oh, we know that choice involves the truth. We know that choice is the true path. But what is that choice? Uh-huh. That was you, right, that said that? Okay, just making sure. Yes. But let's put it into Proverbs terms. Nope. Nope. What? Yes, very good. The choice that is before you is a choice to either fear God or not. That is the choice that is being talked about here. When we look at the beginning of Proverbs chapter 16, the very first words, we can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. It's a very, very telling statement. And it's very, very interesting for those two to be connected to each other. They don't seem like they should be. We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. That second statement doesn't seem to go with that first statement. It should be, we can make our own plans, but God makes his own plans. Right? Shouldn't it be like that? Or we can make the wrong answers, but God has the right answers. That's how it should go, but it doesn't go like that. And the question is, why doesn't it go like that? Why does it say we can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer? It's because, in the long run, quantum theory has no basis in Scripture. What does that mean? What am I saying? Anyone? Bueller? Infinite possibilities. There are infinite possibilities for every single choice that you make. Infinite possibilities. And those infinite possibilities lead to more infinite possibilities. And therefore, truth. Truth is subjective because it could be anything. And it is just as valuable for you to be here at church as it is for you to be in bed, as it is for you to be dead. All of these things are all happening at the same time in the same place, but in different choices. But what is it that the Bible says? We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. 1. There is only one path. There is only one right path. And that path comes with fearing God. One path comes with fearing God. One path. That is the summation of the entire book of Proverbs. It's also the summation of the entire Bible, for the record. It's the summation of everything that we do. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of real knowledge applied. Anything that you know begins with fearing the Lord. There are no multiple choices. There are no multiple paths. There's one single path. And in that path, you find honesty. In that path, you find legacy. In that path, you find... what?
Unity, truth.
Okay, I gave self-control. That's what I was looking for. In that path, you find self-control. So conversely, what do you not find when you don't fear God? You don't find self-control. You don't find legacy. You don't find honesty. Do you understand? Now, as I go through this, you're going to find this statement again and again in different ways. So we start off with the statement, we can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answers. And then it goes on. Let's see. That was verse 1. Verse 9, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Verse... Where is that? Uh, 25. There is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. Verse 33. We may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. This is the overarching theme. Now let's talk a little bit about predestination versus... I gotta love it, Michael. Free will. So, some people may argue that what is being argued here is predestination. What does that mean?
Everything is already decided. God knows what heaven is up.
Sure, exactly. Some people call that Calvinism. Some people call it neo-Calvinism. And then there's free will. And free will is the idea that we make the choices, right? What is being presented here? Sure. Yeah. Is this to say that we don't choose what we do? No. In fact, it's the opposite. What this is saying is that the choice is imperative. Now, let me ask this question. Does the outcome change? Does it?
No. He has the right answer. Steps.
How does this end? What's the last part of 16? Yep. You may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. As Adam says, a Jedi mind trick. Right? Is that what you said? Jedi trick. Force roll. Anyway, this isn't saying that people can't choose to do things. It's not saying that people are put into a box that God decides how everything happens, even though both things are present in it. This is way more complex than that. The whole of Proverbs wouldn't even matter if it weren't for the fact that there is some choice involved. And this actually gives us the ability to make the choice. The way that I understand this is basically that God chooses how he wants things to end up, and we have a decision on what side of things we want to fall. Does that make sense? So, does it matter, for instance, that the elders at Aletheia started Aletheia, according to what I'm saying? Or let me put it in a different way. Would Aletheia still be here if the elders who started it weren't here? What can we assume, though, depending on God's plan? That it would be, because that's what happened. Okay? So, what I'm saying is, or what this is saying is, what happens, happens. Now the converse. Would the German occupation by the Nazi Party happen regardless of if Hitler had risen? Why? Because it was part of God's plan. These are simple truths. What does that say about our personal investment in God's plan? It says that it says that you can't stop it, right? So let me ask, who knows about Left Behind? Not a lot of people. Okay. In the Left Behind series, you're talking about the Antichrist. Oh, let's just talk about Antichrist type of stuff, like End of Days. Terrible movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's why we're talking about it. Can't pass up an opportunity to involve Arnold Schwarzenegger in your sermon. Okay, so End of Days. Anybody know what that's about? The Antichrist is rising, okay? And Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he's Arnold Schwarzenegger, decides that he's going to stop it. Okay, now, tell me, should the Antichrist rise, and we get word that the Antichrist is going to rise, can we stop it?
No.
Why? How did Jesus feel about that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely how he felt about his own purpose. How did he feel about it when others tried to stop it? He got mad. In fact, what did he say to... yeah. What did he say to Peter?
Satan.
Yeah. Yeah, he looked past Peter. He looked past Peter when Peter said, "Surely you will not die." Christ said, "I'm about to be killed. I'm about to be killed so that I can bear this, because it needs to happen." And Peter said, "Surely you won't die. I'm going to protect you." And Christ's statement to Peter was not, "Oh, you're so funny." It was, "Get behind me, Satan." It was, "That is so reprehensible for you to think that you can obstruct God's plan, even if it means my own destruction, that I'm going to associate you directly with Satan." So, we have to understand that there is a plan at place. And though we throw the dice, God does determine how they fall. But then, that gives us a choice. Because if everything is going to happen regardless of us, then that means that nothing is determined because of us. And if nothing is determined because of us, then we can operate freely within what is going to happen. Is that too difficult to understand? If nothing I do changes the course of something, then nothing I do really matters. Then that means the only thing that matters is what I do. Do you understand that? It's a pretty hard, deep concept to understand. So, if the only thing that matters is what I do, because nothing that I do really affects the outcome of anything, and there really is only one path and not multiple paths, which is the other caveat to remember, then what's the smart thing to do? Yeah. What does smart money say? If I know that only one number is going to win, why would I bet on any other number? Does that make sense? So in this vein, you have both predestination that says that we are locked in, or at least the outcome is locked in. And then you have free will that says, because the outcome is locked in, I can move freely. This is the thing that people don't get. People often think that it's got to be one or the other. I say that it has to be both for things to make sense. If both aren't there, we can't move freely. People also think that free will means absolute will, and it doesn't. My child, when she becomes mobile, she'll be able to move freely within the space that I give her. Is that free will less because it's constrained? No. She doesn't have absolute will, but she does have free will. We can move freely within God's design. And anybody who tells you that they have free will, I would challenge them to jump off a building and see if they can fly. because they have absolute will in their minds. It's important for our definition to be correct. Now, where do we find correct definition? Okay, time plus chance equals what? Who said that? Time plus chance equals what?
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Time plus chance equals what, according to the Dewey system of education?
Evolution.
Thank you. Yes. Time plus chance is the definition of evolution. Okay? Time plus chance. Given enough time with enough, given enough time, if I place random elements inside a box, they will form themselves over time to create order. Okay? That is what is taught. It goes completely against tons of different things, observation of multiple laws, but with that said, that's what's taught. Now, if we understand that time plus chance equals evolution or order, then what does that say about our responsibility to truth? No responsibility to truth. There's absolutely no truth out there because time plus chance determines how things are created. It's not a moral, intelligent being that determines how things are created. Do you understand the difference? So with that said, if we are to believe in time plus chance, where is truth? It's nowhere. It is in what you make of it, and that's it. And what you make of it, you have to understand to not be true. So it's great that we have people, because this was talked about this week, it's great that we have people out there who think that rape, for instance, is immoral. Thou shalt not rape should be the 11th commandment, okay? And that can even be used against the church to say, thou shalt not rape should be the 11th commandment. So obviously, the church got it wrong. And because of this, I believe that because the church wasn't inclusive enough to be a moral judge, that it obviously isn't real. Therefore, I don't believe in a God. I believe that everything is time plus chance. But my question is, if everything is time plus chance, why would you even think that there is such a thing as morality? Why would it matter if rape was a part of our morality? It shouldn't. Because really, what should happen is rape. What should happen, and don't use that as a sound clip inappropriately, okay? What should happen is that we go out and we spread our seed as much as we can, we take what we want, and we dispose of it. That is called what? Survival of the fittest. Now, the Marquis de Sade would note that that's pleasurable, but that's survival of the fittest. And according to what we're taught in the school system, that is how society has established itself over the years. Does that make sense? Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't make. It doesn't make honesty. It doesn't make community. It doesn't make legacy. It doesn't make self-control. In fact, what it makes is complete abandonment. It makes complete dishonesty because I don't trust anybody but myself to propagate myself. It gets rid of legacy because now I have a whiny baby that is in front of me that's taking my resources in the moment. And because nobody before me ever had a baby, because I've evolved to this point, I'm going to think that there is some bizarre growth on me that I should kill. Think about that. If nobody ever had a baby, and all of a sudden, inside your body, something's moving and squirming and taking your resources from you, would you think that that's an amazing gift from God? What would you think? Yeah! Who saw the last Alien movie? Do you remember that scene? You remember when they took the alien out of the girl? That was traumatic. And it wasn't even really happening. That's exactly what you would think. Why have we even allowed children to exist? Because mankind did not start with the idea of chaos. It started with the idea of order. What happens to us is supposed to happen to us. So because what's happened to us is supposed to happen to us, we roll with the punches. And in that, we have a safe place to develop things like honesty and community and self-control. And those things develop more things. It is impossible for you to choose God if you do not believe in truth. And it is impossible to believe in truth if you do not believe in truth. What am I saying by that? How many people in your life do you know that say, my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth? Isn't that what we hear on a constant basis? Even Christians. My truth is my truth. Your truth is your truth. Your way of worshiping God is your way of worshiping God, and my way is my way. And as long as, we just love each other, then everything will be fine. I tell you, it is impossible to fear God if you believe that, because there may be multiple choices, but there is only one way that dice lands. And if that's the truth, then who cares if there's multiple choices? And to quantum physics and quantum theory that says, you know what? The Earth may have been intelligently designed, but it also may have evolved this way. And you can really make anything happen because there's multiple choices out there. And so how can we really know the truth? You know what I tell you about that? I will say to you, who cares? Because this is the world that I live in. I don't live in world 52A, where gravity doesn't exist. Why does that matter? It doesn't, because this is the world I live in. And you're an idiot if you think that you should spend your life trying to figure out what happens in 52A, when the world around you is dying because people aren't being intentful. When there's children that are being killed on a regular basis in America because they're not seen as human beings. Or there's children that are dying on a regular basis in India because they don't know how to take care of themselves over there. And because there's malaria and all sorts of other diseases that are being spread. Or when there's children who are being sex trafficked, even in the US and all over Europe. You're really going to tell me that it's super important that I understand that in World 52A that may not be happening? Fear of the Lord means understanding now. It means understanding the moment, the context. And the context is always what? It's always relational. The context is always relationship. The context is always honesty. The context is always legacy. But we don't and can't understand that if what we focus on is the concept of your concept is your concept and my concept is my concept. That's weak. It has no balls. What do I mean by that? When I'm saying it has no balls, what do I mean? No. Much more visceral than that. It literally, metaphorically, has no testicles. It cannot reproduce itself. It is a dying concept. It will destroy itself. It has no balls. Yes, just to be clear, no balls. If you were going to get in bed with a partner because you wanted to prolong your legacy, why would you get in bed with someone you can't reproduce with? If you think it's fun, okay, I guess, But if your purpose in life is to step up, if your purpose in life is to go further and prolong your legacy, why would you get in bed with somebody that can't do that? Now again, what are we taught that we are supposed to do? By the Dewey system of education. Evolve. And how do we do that? We do that by propagating our species and destroying the threats. What would the number one threat to a species be? Is it predators? It's infertility. So how does it make sense that the supposedly intellectual get in bed with such an anti-intellectual concept? It doesn't. It means that they're being irrational. And where does that irrationality come from? No fear of God. You have a choice. And that's what Proverbs 16 is saying. You have a choice. It's not a choice to do what's right and what's wrong. That's way too simple. It's not ever a choice to do what's right or what's wrong. It's not a choice to make money or not make money. It's not a choice to go to work or stay home with your kids. It is a choice to fear God or not fear God, because the dice will land however they land. But the question is, will you be standing depending on where they land? Do you understand that concept? There's all sorts of stuff in here in chapter 16. All sorts of stuff in here about all of this stuff. Pride goes before destruction and haughtiness before a fall. What's that saying? How does that relate to it? What I want you to do is go back and look at that. I want you to look at chapter 16 and ask yourself, what choice is this asking me to make? Because that's really what it's saying. How does this relate to fear of the Lord? A person who is prideful doesn't fear God. Because what are they being with themselves? Dishonest. Now when we look back at Satan, when we look back at Lucifer, what was it that he did? Yes, he was prideful, but what was he more than prideful? Or what was he more base level than prideful? He was deceitful. He was dishonest with his own position, and he sought to make himself on par with God. Pride goes before the fall. He didn't fear God. You see in this section, you see a lot of things that can just be relegated to wise and foolish. I would challenge you to not relegate them to that. I would challenge you to make your definition of wise and foolish fearing God or not fearing God. So instead of thinking of things as what is wise and what is foolish, I literally want you to think of, is this person fearing God or not fearing God? When you see, a person making a stupid comment on TV, is that person fearing God or is that person not fearing God? When you do something that's foolish, this is a hard one, because when you do something that's foolish, you tend to think that everything else is intact, right? We tend to think that we're completely rational and that we just kind of screwed up, but that all of our rationale is still intact. You have to ask that question, was I fearing God in that moment or not? 10 to 1, you probably weren't when you did something bad. Does that mean you weren't a Christian? Does that mean you weren't a believer? Does that mean God doesn't love you? Does that mean... No, it doesn't mean any of that. It means that you lost sight of it. that you missed the mark. Now, this was talked about in our threads. When we talk about self-control, what does that mean in terms of the bullseye? Got a bullseye. It's got, 3 rings leading to the, it's a Target logo. Okay. So I have our corporate-sponsored bullseye. What does it mean to have self-control according to God? Does it mean that I hit the bullseye? What? Is that what it means, that I shoot within the target?
You're going to fall off that target.
Is it so I need to stay within the target? Anybody else? That's what it is. Self-control does not mean hitting the target. The mark of a bullseye is not the target. The mark of the bullseye is the center. Whoever says, after they shoot up a bullseye and there's 3 marks, none of them hitting the target, that I meant to do that. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine somebody puffing up their chest after shooting a bullseye, they never hit the target, they never hit the center, saying, I meant to do that. I hit that target. What is that? It's dishonesty, right? That's completely dishonest. Self-control is not falling within the target, it's hitting the bullseye. It's hitting the absolute center of the target. So then, are we ever able to hit that? That's a question. Are we ever able to hit that? How? Fear of the Lord. That's what I was looking for. Now, the Eldership Academy might argue that it's actually common grace, which allows us to, but we're not going to go into that. Sorry, we're studying common grace in doctrinal basics. Anyway, is it possible for us to hit the center? Yes, it is possible for us to hit the center. Will it probably be a stroke of luck? Never. It's never a stroke of luck. How do I know that? Because the dice always falls where God wants it to fall. Is there an element to it of chance? No. But what is there an element to it of? Choice. There's an element of choice in it. The choice is whether you fear God. Now, maybe you put that into terms, and I would argue that a lot of people do through Eastern mysticism. We put it into terms of, what's it called? What am I thinking of? You imagine yourself, what am I thinking of? Dad, what am I thinking of? Yeah, okay, well, you imagine yourself making the basket ahead of time, okay? You guys know that? Visualization, that's the term I'm looking for. That's an Eastern mysticism technique. What essentially are you doing in that? What you're doing is you're putting your faith in a construct that you've built of the future. It's not really fearing God. Faith is not devoid of rationality. Rationality is honesty. Now, what am I saying about that then when we talk about like the Dewey system of education again? Does it ever teach any good things? Do we ever learn anything from going to public school? Yes, of course we do. Of course we learn things, as much as I'm loath to admit it. Yes, of course we learn things by doing things that aren't Bible-based. In fact, We can learn things from doing things that are anti-Bible based, which, by the way, is exactly what the Dewey system of education is formed off of. Our public schools are anti-Bible. That's how they started. John Dewey hated God. He wanted something other than the institutions that were created. And so, that's how we get the public education. Does that mean we can't learn anything that's true? No, we can. We can learn things that are true. Does that mean that that because it's true, that it is the whole truth? No. Does that mean that because it is true and not the whole truth, that it doesn't have value for us? No, it still has value for us. But what it is not is a simple truth. What it's not is honest with itself. What it's not is legacy. I was going to say legacical, but that's not a word. So, let's take that out of the realm of the school system and let's put it into relationship. Here's a hard one for you. Maybe we'll get flagged on Ustream. Is it possible for a homosexual relationship to have love? I'm just asking, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. What's not possible for it to have? Fear of the Lord. How does that translate? That translates down to not having certain elements that we've talked about, like the inability to have literal legacy. Is that to say then that there is no value that's present? This is where the church has a problem. Because the church has a tendency to say that if there is not, choosing my words carefully here, the church has a tendency to say that if the whole cannot be perceived, then there is no value whatsoever. What I would tell you is, who cares? It doesn't matter whether there's value in it. What matters is, where does the dice fall? I'm not going to sit here and debate whether homosexuals can love each other. What I am going to say is that where the dice falls is not determined by how I or they feel about love. It's determined by what God says. Do you understand that point? Because what I've just brought up is something that's an extremely volatile subject. And as I have said before, on less volatile subjects, that we need to have a communal understanding in order to promote legacy, in order to promote self-control, in order to promote not our legacy, but God's legacy. And as I have stood here and said before, in somewhat inflammatory way, I don't care how that makes me look. If you're going to be honest about your relationship with God, then you are also going to need to come to a point where you decide where you will stand on issues just as prevalent as that. Because it's real easy to say that my parenting is my parenting. And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But can you stand there and say, parenting is to happen this way? And will you do it boldly? I'm not saying like a brute. I'm not saying without cleverness. I'm not saying without gentleness. But I'm saying boldly. Will you do it boldly? Fear of the Lord and knowing that the dice lands on a certain side because God determines it. It's easy when we put it in terms of Christianity. It's not so easy when we put it in terms of the world. It's not so easy when we apply it to how we are supposed to interact with others. The number one understanding that you must have is fear of the Lord. Lack of an understanding of truth leads to all sorts of chaos. I can sit here and say that based upon evolution and time plus chance, that it's okay, just as okay for rape to happen as it is for it not to happen. I just did that. Do you remember? I can say that based on time plus chance, and using that as my barometer, that since I am not to judge what love is, that it's okay for a human being to carry on a romantic relationship with an object or an animal. Or, dare I put the two things together that I brought up, not object or animal, a child. Because they love each other. And who am I to judge what the truth of love is? Again, not a sound clip to be used. If we're not bold enough to stand up and say that a barometer does exist, if we're not bold enough to stand up and say that it doesn't matter how I feel about it, it doesn't matter whether I feel that love is real in the relationship and that there's value there, but what matters is fear of God and the fact that the dice will be thrown and land as He sees fit, and that is my number one barometer, then everything goes to chaos. There is no relationship. There is no honesty. There's no legacy. So you have a choice before you. I think it's great that when we think about our relationship with God, we think about our relationship with God. But what about when it applies to the people around us? What about when it applies to our community? What about when it applies to the values that are being attacked or presented? What position are you going to take? Do you really fear God? Or do you value something else more? I want you to think about your position on everything. Everything from universal health care to homosexuality to whether you like Michael Keaton more than Christian Bale. I want you to ask yourself, what is your barometer? Is it based on fear of God or is it based on comfort? Is it based on fear of God or is it based on social contract theory? Is it based on fear of God or is it based on brainwashing? I don't care if you're a Christian. Anti-intellectual Christianity is just as bad as being an atheist, in my book. Do you understand what I mean by that? Anti-intellectual Christianity is just as bad as being an atheist. I would rather you not be a Christian if you're going to be a moron about it. That is not who Christ was. It's not who Christ is. It's not who God is. God is not a mindless machine. So, go to your lives, question what you do, and put it in the perspective of fearing God. Do not be anti-intellectual about it. Ask the questions that you need to ask. And do not be afraid of the answers. Be honest. Because truth is truth, and it cannot be exhausted. And so because it cannot be exhausted, you don't have to worry about pursuing a lie. Because lies can be exhausted. And eventually, if your heart is set on finding the truth, what will happen? You'll find it. You'll exhaust the lie, and then you'll be left with truth. So don't be scared to pursue truth. Don't be scared to look deep into your hearts and ask the question, do you truly fear God? Or are you just playing church? And I'm going to say, I know people won't like it, and I don't care how it makes me look. If you're just playing church, don't waste our time. Because we are not just playing church. Okay? Challenge yourselves. Excelsior. Let's pray. Lord God, thank you for today. Thank you for allowing us to come together and just talk honestly. I just pray that as we step out into this week, that you will hold us accountable to the people that we are when we're not around each other. I pray that you will burden us with the responsibility to follow through with what we believe to be true. And I pray that you will equip us with the knowledge to back up that belief. I pray that you will give us mercy in that process. Help us to find hope in knowing that there is something that's bigger than us, that is true, that is a standard, and we don't have to worry about where the dice falls. And I just pray that you'll keep us safe. In your name, amen.